Today on Politics Unplugged, President Trump threatens more ICE raids in Democratic-run cities. Is Phoenix next, and how should the city prepare? We speak with former mayor and current Congressman Greg Stanton. Who's right and who's wrong? We debate Trump's decision to send military troops to quash dissent. And a clean elections debate gets dirty. Our panel weighs in now on Politics Unplugged.
Good evening. I'm political editor Dennis Welch, and this is Politics Unplugged. President Trump is threatening more ICE raids in cities run by Democrats. So should Phoenix be bracing for more? Here to talk about that, Congressman Greg Stanton, who is also the former mayor of Phoenix. Thank you very much for being here.
Great to be here.
Can't think of anybody better and more knowledgeable to be here talking about this issue. But first, let's get your reaction to Trump using, troops to help support these ICE raids. Your thoughts on this and him federalizing National Guard troops?
Really bad public policy and illegal, as the court recently has indicated. There's no indication that the street protests that were going on couldn't appropriately be handled by the city of Los Angeles. They have an outstanding police department there. There's no indication that that couldn't be handled by the local police department. What should happen is, if in fact it ever got to the point where protests or violence on the streets got beyond the capacity of the city, then the mayor and or the governor could ask the president to federalize National Guard to help. This is what obviously happened here, is that Trump wanted in on this. He wanted to act like he was tough. He was standing up to these protesters, almost all of whom they were peacefully protesting, exercising their First Amendment rights, which one of the great things we get to do as Americans is to go to the streets, peacefully protest, let the leaders in the country know where you stand on particular issues. No reason for the president to have to do this. And if he continues to do this, his popularity, because the polling shows that the American people don't support bringing in the Marines or federalizing the National Guard on local issues, as we have seen. If he continues to do that, his numbers are going to continue to go down.
Okay, but images drive a lot of this, and we did see some images of those of some of the anti-ICE protests in Los Angeles getting a little bit out of hand. We saw a burnt car, things like that. However, what gets lost in all this is LAPD put out a press release shortly before Trump was announcing, or shortly after Trump was announcing he was going to federalize National Guard troops, praising the protesters for being peaceful, or mostly peaceful. So again, you think it's just Donald Trump trying to get in on this?
Both things can be true. Both things can be true. Obviously, if somebody is burning cars or engaging in any kind of violence or actions against property, that needs to be dealt with from a law enforcement capacity. No one disagrees with that. And any time there is a large-scale protest, virtually all people are doing it peacefully, and there are some bad actors that cross that line, and they should be dealt with from a law enforcement perspective. That should be done at the local level. We trust our police department. We trust our police chief to handle it. And Donald Trump coming in and trying to federalize it, acting like that only he can come in and save the city. There's a reason why people have reacted so negatively to those actions.
And as somebody who's very astute with local politics, municipal politics, you would only want something like this if it was beyond the capacity of local police to actually handle this. And police departments, you were saying, in this situation,
not only want that, that's the law. That's actually the law. The role of feds is not to engage in local law enforcement, and the role of local law enforcement is not to engage in federal law enforcement. There's a reason why we have local police officers who are trained to deal with situations like we saw in LA. The Marines are not trained to deal with local law enforcement. National Guard are not trained to deal with local law enforcement. We saw that years ago with tragedy of Kent State many years ago. They have different roles, and they should be kept separate.
So what is your reaction then to the court ruling now? It's on hold for now because it's being appealed, but the federal courts basically said, that Trump cannot federalize these troops and that they should go back under the control of the governor. Now, it's being appealed again right now. What was your initial reaction to that?
Well, that's the law. The court did the right thing and applied the law correctly. As you know, there are over 200 lawsuits against this president for overreaching the role of the executive. The United States of America elected Donald Trump president of the United States. There's no election denialism on our side of the aisle. He has the powers of the presidency. Somehow he thinks he has the powers of a king, and he continually goes beyond the powers of the presidency, and we're going to challenge him every single time in virtually every court case that has come down. Challenging his overreach has gone on the side of saying this president has overreached. The American people want to protect our form of government, our checks and balances, the independence of the judiciary, and this president keeps going beyond that, and we're going to try to fight him every single time when he goes beyond his authority as president.
And this administration has also threatened similar raids in Democrat-run cities. He put out a list of cities where this could be happening, places like Chicago, Boston, and whatnot. Phoenix is not on that list, but it is a Democratic-run city. You're the former mayor of Phoenix. Should the city be preparing for something like this? How do you think the city should be preparing for this?
Something that is very un-American that we're seeing happening, and that is this administration threatening communities or even nonprofits that are teaching people their rights. Know your rights, kind of like the Bill of Rights. And they're suggesting that somehow teaching people their constitutional rights is obstruction of justice and threatening organizations. That is un-American. Teaching people their constitutional rights, that's as American as it can be. And that's a step in the wrong direction. Look, the local law enforcement should not impede ICE or other federal law enforcement engaged in their activities. We can have a debate about whether mass deportation is good or bad. I think mass deportation is bad. By the way, President Trump thinks mass deportation is bad, as he put it out in a tweet in recent days, saying specifically that now he realizes that raids on farm workers or raids on hotel workers is bad for this country. I was just going to get to this. My response to the president is, no duh. Where have you been? This is why we need real immigration reform in the United States of America. Everyone agrees we need strong borders and border security. But can we also agree that we finally need an immigration system that helps support and grow the American economy? That doing mass deportation, which I think the president may be listening to Stephen Miller, his advisor, too much. But if he listens to Americans, real Americans, including business owners, they're going to say that is really bad policy for the United States of America.
I was going to say, were you surprised Donald Trump put on his Truth Social, where he did seem to admit, that migrant workers are very important for farmers, for people in the hospitality restaurant industry? He said changes are coming. What would you like to see this president do in regards to that?
Fire Stephen Miller and listen to Americans. Americans overwhelmingly understand that common sense immigration reform, comprehensive immigration reform, is the way to go. In addition to supporting our farm workers who've put food on our table, they should be given a path to citizenship if they haven't engaged in other illegal activities. Everyone agrees. People that are convicted of serious crimes, that are a danger to communities, they need to be deported. But doing this mass deportation is harmful to America, harmful to the American economy. In addition to what the president said on farm workers and on hotel workers, we ought to be supporting our dreamers. We ought to be making sure that they have a path as well. We should be supporting university students from around the globe. Instead of kicking them out like this administration is doing, if they come to this country, they pass a background check, they get a degree in STEM, science, technology, and math, we ought to staple a green card to their diploma. There are ways to use immigration to support the American economy. This president, I think, is learning the hard way that mass deportation goes in exactly the wrong direction.
All right, have to end it there. I mean, there's so much more to talk about. We couldn't get even into a lot of that stuff. But still ahead, President Trump is sending the military into cities to crack down on protests. We'll debate what that means when Politics Unplugged continues. Welcome back to Politics Unplugged. President Trump is mobilizing the U.S. military to stop protests in American cities. The White House says it's necessary in order to maintain order in California. Governor Gavin Newsom calls it the deranged fantasy of a dictatorial president. Here to talk about it is Democratic consultant Adam Kinsey and Republican Brian Sychek. Thanks for both for being here. Let's start with you. I think the big question on people's minds right now is whether or not these moves were actually necessary. By all accounts, it looked like LAPD, state of California, had everything under control, and the president is being accused of just inciting more activity and stuff with these moves. Your response to that?
Well, that's what Mayor of LA Karen Bass say and Governor Newsom. I think if we think back to 2020, Minneapolis, Seattle, Portland, these are cities that basically ceded territory to rioters and agitators, and President Trump was not going to let that happen again. If LA and the state of California could not get it done, he was not going to let the looting and the car burning and the vandalism and the destruction of federal property to continue. Things have been quieter the last couple nights, and that is certainly a result of the National Guard and President Trump sending a message both to Los Angeles and to cities around the country. This type of behavior will not be tolerated. So I think we should be appreciative, and California, frankly, should be appreciative of what Donald Trump has done. Gavin Newsom, obviously this feels like the start of his presidential campaign in 2028. He was running as a moderate a couple weeks ago, having Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon on the show. Now all of a sudden he's trying to lead the anti-Trump charge. So this feels like political convenience and to wave the flag of righteous indignation by the California governor.
Oh, so do you agree with that? I mean, do you think California should be thanking President Trump for his actions?
No. I don't think so. I think the Los Angeles Police Department, LA County Sheriff's Office, the state of California, the mayor, they all said, we've got this. It was not the same thing as ceding land in these long-term protests that you saw in Seattle and places like that, that Brian mentioned. And I think the National Guard largely has been there to protect the municipal police that are the ones that are actually protecting the city. This is not about actually protecting things. This is Trump wanting to be the strong man. You know, for somebody who rails against Iranian dictatorship, he certainly emulates a lot of things that we see in that country. He likes being a strong man. He likes the action. He likes sending in the Marines. He likes telling people that at Saturday's military parade, any sort of protesters or dissents will be dealt with severely and harshly. That's what he likes. This is political theater for him. He does not care about the economic ramifications of this. He does not care at all about the humanitarian ramifications of this. This is merely him flexing and being the authoritarian strong man that he wants to be.
And let me get your reaction then to the recent court ruling. It's being appealed right now, but the court's basically said, a federal appeals court basically said that, Trump can't do this. He cannot just come in, federalize the National Guard.
He can't, and I think, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, unless he can't just do that on his own. He's got to go through the governor and whatnot. So, it stopped him on that. It's that ruling is on hold while it's being appealed, but just want your response to that.
Yeah, and of course, it was absolutely illegal, and Trump can't rewrite the Constitution. He did not care that it was not within his executive powers. It's about the action. It's about the actual. He doesn't see 3 moves ahead and what's going to happen 6 weeks from now. So that appeal is not going to be overturned. The National Guard is the purview of the governor of California and will be unless there is a congressional action that gives it to the federal government, and it's not happening. And
get your response to that. I mean, Adam's saying, like, this isn't about policing. And then if you look at the memorandum that Donald Trump wrote, it's not specific to Los Angeles. It's kind of open-ended. This means it could happen in any city. The governor or the president has threatened to do similar actions in Democrat-run cities. Phoenix is not on that list right now, but Phoenix is a Democrat-run city, so it could be coming here. Is this good precedent? Is this good policy coming from the White House?
I think this is absolutely sending a message again that cities are not going to be overrun. And the fact is, ICE is in Los Angeles now, as ICE is around the country enforcing federal law. There are millions of people let in by Joe Biden. Some 11 million people were let into the country illegally. And President Trump promised in the campaign that he was going to have mass deportations and do everything to get these people out. Let's take a step back and also look at Trump won every swing state in 2024. He increased his electoral college lead from 2016 to 2024. There's been a lot of ideological jujitsu in President Trump's last decade, but his support for immigration, support to remove illegal immigrants and support mass deportation has been consistent. This is the one thing the American people knew they were going to get with Donald Trump. So I don't think anybody should be surprised by this. And absolutely, this is to send a message to other cities and to other rioters that lawlessness, looting, burning of cars, vandalism, destruction of property, the ignoring law enforcement will simply not be tolerated.
Nobody's surprised by this at all, but you saw more violence at some NFL, NBA, and MLB celebrations in some of these cities than you're seeing right now in Los Angeles. This is not about law and order. And the number of deportations, here's the real problem, is that when you campaign on the false, fictitious narrative that there are 11 million people committing violent crimes in this country, when you get elected and your people want you to start rounding them up and sending them away, and you realize they don't exist, there aren't 11 million undocumented workers in here committing violent crimes, then you start chasing farm workers through strawberry fields in California. And that's wrong. That's economically, morally indefensible. And that's what this guy is about right now. It is not about keeping cities safe. He is praying that there is a car fire in a major city so he can send in the Marines. This is not a situation that requires the Marines or the National Guard. He is blowing it out of proportion, much like he blew out of proportion the idea that the country is overrun with these undocumented immigrants committing crimes. It's not happening.
And let's talk a little bit, for as long as I've been reporting in politics, I've always heard from Republicans that they want immigrants to come here, but they want them to come here legally. Now, these ICE raids that we've seen, a lot of them some of them have been happening at the courts. These are people who are following the law, who are showing up to their court dates. I mean, if the idea before was come here legally, shouldn't the idea from the Trump administration be then they should be deported legally as well?
Well, the fact is 11 million people came illegally, and that's what the American people wanted when they voted for Donald Trump. Certainly not every one of them.
They didn't want migrant farm workers
certainly
deported.
Not every one of them was breaking laws on a regular basis, but they did break the law when they came to this country. Bipartisan immigration laws passed by multiple Congresses over the years. President Trump promised to get these folks out of the country, and that's exactly what he's doing. It's certainly not a pretty process, and you can certainly find examples that the news is happy to highlight of sad stories, and those are real. But at the end of the day, these are people who broke the law.
Yeah.
This is what the American people want. This is why Trump won the popular vote, increased his electoral college, and why the majority of the American people support this process.
Not buying that for a second. The majority of the American people were sold a bill of goods that we needed to get millions of violent criminals out of our streets. They don't exist. The millions of criminals don't exist. So the only way you can get your 3,000 arrests every day that Stephen Miller is demanding is if you are taking people out that are non-violent people whose only offense is a civil offense of being in the country without proper documentation.
So you do concede they broke the law when they came here?
Quick response, and we'll have to wrap up.
These are people who came illegally. President Trump said he was going to deport them. We should be appreciative. Unlike most politicians, he's doing what he said he was going to do.
The economy literally crumbles if you deport every undocumented worker. For generations, we have told people we're going to look the other way because we need you doing these jobs. And now we're moving the goalposts and we are breaking apart families. It's not who we are as Americans.
What's the point of having laws if we're not going to enforce them?
We absolutely are. I could say the same thing for President Trump, who continues to violate the law by doing things like sending in the National Guard which is unconstitutional.
We'll have to wrap it up there. Unfortunately, we're out of time. It just always goes by too quickly here. And up next, I'll be bringing in our panel to talk about all of this week's major headlines, including federal agents tackling and handcuffing a U.S. senator during a news conference. That's next on Politics Unplugged. Welcome back to Politics Unplugged. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem was holding a news conference in Los Angeles Thursday when California Senator Alex Padilla tried to ask a question. Here's what happened next. And here to talk about that and the rest of this week's top stories, Republican consultant Marcus Dellartino and former Democratic lawmaker Isaiah LeBlanc. Thanks for being here. Some interesting interactions there going on with Senator Padilla. He went there ostensibly to ask for a question. He was forcibly removed. He was handcuffed. He was not arrested. And later, though, he did have a meeting with Kristi Noem to talk about the ICE raids and the Trump administration's immigration policies. We'll start with you and get your reaction to that.
I mean, I think we are definitely living in different times where you have the senior senator from California who is there doing his job, representing his constituents in his state that they've been able to manage very well up to this point, and to be dragged out of the room for asking questions and thrown to the ground and handcuffed. And this is just one of many people, right? We've had a judge who's been arrested. We've had a New Jersey mayor, a congresswoman. What does that say about what is happening today, and what does that mean for everyday citizens, and what will we experience?
This is a bad look for the administration. I mean, roughing up or getting physical with a sitting U.S. senator who just showed up there
I'm
to
glad
ask
you
a
point
question.
that out. Well, he just showed up, so he didn't announce himself.
He did announce himself. He did announce
Well, he's charging the. He
It's
came
a
in
federal
aggressively.
building.
You have to admit, he came in aggressively.
It's a federal
He assumed
building.
that everybody knows who he is because that's what politicians do, and he aggressively went towards the mic at the Homeland Security Secretary's press conference, who everybody knows is surrounded by what? Homeland Security, who are jacked up already. So their job is to prevent somebody like that from aggressively coming towards the secretary.
Okay, I'm gonna push back. It's a federal building, number one. Before you enter a federal building, you have to identify yourself. And not only that, but he was in a room adjacent, found out that Noam was having a meeting. So clearly people knew that the senator, the senior senator from California, was in the building. So with all
Does that mean that
due
the
respect,
actual agent knows who the senior senator from California is? I
he
guarantee
identified
you
himself.
they do not.
He identified himself.
He
identified himself.
He
did not.
screamed after he
If
aggressively
you call
charged.
that, we're
All right.
screaming. If you call that screaming, then we're in trouble.
Here's what he achieved. Exactly what he wanted to do. This is exactly the reaction he wanted.
Again, there's a
He got
long
exactly
list.
what he
There's a
wanted.
long list of Democrats that are being attacked by this administration. Again, a judge for asking ICE agents to leave her courtroom for doing her job. A mayor, a governor, and a congresswoman.
Okay.
It's wrong.
All right. Well, let's switch gears here and let's bring it local. We had a Democratic debate for CD7 to replace Raul Grijalva, and it got a little interesting. I think we have some video here I want to show of that. Here's one of the candidates right there, trying to make a point, but then ended up flipping the middle finger to the camera. There, Marcus, care to weigh in on this?
This is the. I need to somehow get myself to relevance here, and so I'm going to try and be cute by too much. This guy also, by the way, this is why I call it the People's Republic of Pima County or People's Republic of Tucson. He's actually advocating for a limit on how much money you can make. So he's setting them out in his head, and everything over that should just go to the government, or you have to buy a hospital, you have to buy whatever. Art museum. I think that's a pretty interesting point to take. And my other thing coming out from this was everybody agreed that Medicare for all should exist. And only in the People's Republic of Pima County would these people take the most broke government program we have, the one that is bankrupting the United States, and advocate for us to expand it.
Well, and what do you see as the main issue of this debate down in that district? I mean, what's going to separate these folks? I mean, obviously, whoever wins this Democratic primary is likely going to go on and hold that seat for as long as they want. What's the main issue this year you see down there that's going to divide them?
Oh, honestly, I think it's Daniel Hernandez and Adelita Grijalva is the main issue, right?
Yeah.
Like, who are people going to vote?
So it's coming down to like more personality driven.
I think it is going to be more personality driven, to be frank. And I think Adelita Grijalva did a really good job in this debate. From what I saw, I did watch the original debate that occurred a few weeks ago with another station. And I think everyone definitely improved their game and their debate comments.
All right, we'll have to end it right there. That is all the time we have. Be sure to join us next week for more Politics Unplugged. Good night.